welcome back. If you recall, in my last session, I was talking about how relevant ASEAN is. But having said that, ASEAN is not perfect, and today I will talk about the key challenges facing ASEAN. As you can see from this slide, number 35, some of the key challenges facing ASEAN today are what I call the various different political systems and national interests. Whether ASEAN is today a truly integrated economic grouping. And 3, with all this fourth industrial revolution, new ideas, AI, technologies, ASEAN may find itself today lack of innovation and creativity. So these are the few challenges actually that faces ASEAN today. The other big problem that we face internally is also the need to narrow the development gap. This is something that I took back in 2012 from the Financial Times, where it states how the advanced economy like Singapore and Brunei are way ahead of the lower income countries like the CLMV, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar and Vietnam. 8 years on today, back in 2020, the story remains the same. You have high income countries like Brunei, Darussalam and Singapore, upper middle income countries like Malaysia and Thailand, and I think to some extent Indonesia, and you have the lower middle income countries for the rest. So what we call the narrowing of development gap, NDG, is a big issue, because for countries to be part of ASEAN, the end in mind or the vision is to ensure everybody grow at a more equitable, more equal opportunity, pace and speed. But if you continue to have advanced economy running faster than the rest, it may defeat the purpose of having what we call the ASEAN integration. Challenges for ASEAN: ease of doing business. One way to overcome economic or to bring up the economic development naturally is to talk about how do you attract the foreign direct investment. Is your country a place easy to do business? And when you look at the chart based on May 2019, you have Singapore deemed to be the number 2 easiest place in the world to conduct business. The next country down actually is Malaysia, number 12, and Thailand at 21. And for the rest, you can see all the way down to Myanmar, 165. The world has about 195 countries. So you can, based on that, you can see the uneven distribution of where each country stands in terms of ease of doing business. And as we talk about Timor-Leste, a potential member, they are currently occupying 181 spots in a world of 195 countries. So this region, you can see, is so diverse, and on the whole, it may not make any attractive for the business investor to do business. This chart talk about the cost to export per container. As I mentioned, Singapore on average it costs about $460 to export one container. But if you go to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, it's about 610. I took these slides from Metro TV in Jakarta. So for each container, we are looking at a difference of $150 per container. If you are the business investors, I'm sure you will want to put your logistics system in Singapore. But that would mean fulfilling what we call the vicious cycle. Advanced economy continue to be more advanced. The back end economy continue to stay at the back. Next slide, we are looking at the small region like ASEAN having 4 different time zones. If you go to Jayapura in the east, it's about 9 hours ahead of London Greenwich Mean Time, GWT. Then you have the plus 8 hours like Singapore, Brunei, Kuala Lumpur, Manila, and Bali. Jakarta is another hour behind. But Bangkok, Phnom Penh, Vientiane, and Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh. And finally in Myanmar, Yangon, Naypyidaw, half an hour behind Jakarta. So for a small region like ASEAN, you have 4 different time zones. This has an impact, obviously, to businessmen who may want to trade shares, stocks trading, and they will have to wake up and see where they are. Depending on where they are, look at the time, 9 o'clock, they can start to do the trading. Likewise, on the roads, even on the traffic system, half of ASEAN drive on the same side as Jakarta, Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand and Indonesia. And the other half, the CLNV plus Philippines, is on this side. Where the car, you enter the car from the left door, drive on the right side. This may seem to be very minor to you, but these are all costs add up to businessmen and investors. Because for them to send goods and container, they will have to change vehicle or change driver at the border. So these are all added costs to the overheads. Even electric plugs, you find that each country undertake different system, different model. You have the 3 head, 2 pins, or 3 pins, 2 head. Surely ASEAN as a whole, we can harmonize some of this low-hanging fruit, we call it. So all you know, I'm trying to sum up is that ASEAN is only as strong as the slowest member. And the purpose of forming a community is essentially to have shared prosperity despite what we call the unity in diversity. Please get your hands hold on this ASEAN 2025 Forging Ahead guidebook. This is what we call the holy book to guide ASEAN regional integration for the next 5 years. We began to issue this book back in 2015. So this was a book that guide the regional integration over the course of 10 years to 2025. I would just like to mention that young people or youth is especially mentioned 19 times in this whole book, Forging Ahead Together, 5 times in the political security community measures, 3 times in ASEAN economic community, and 11 times in the ASEAN social cultural community. So this shows that how much emphasis we do have working with the young people, the youth like you. For myself, where I'm sitting in the ASEAN Secretariat, stakeholder engagement is one of my duties, and young people is one of the key stakeholders in this region. So under the ASEAN Communication Master Plan, which guide me, we do have various measures to work with young people like you. How do we use the social media to engage with you? How do we undertake direct face-to-face consultation? And if it's not possible, through such a platform like this, online learning with you. Right? Because we realize, based on public sentiment, ASEAN is too far removed from Southeast Asian youth. And anything that we talk, you may think that it's a propaganda. So we were trying to now, even at policy making process, we are now trying to make it as friendly, easy to understand to you where ASEAN is. Otherwise, the young people has no idea what it is. After all, youth is the future, and the future of ASEAN is youth. And by the way, why we are particularly place a lot of emphasis on young people is because we realize that ASEAN is, after all, a very youthful and young region. Because only Singapore currently has an aged population, followed by Thailand and Vietnam. But the rest of the other 7 countries, young people constitute a big middle portion of the population. This is one of my last slides. I will just throw this question to you. Perhaps instead of me summing up where ASEAN is, you might want to share with us your thoughts about whether is ASEAN's joint bid to host the World Cup football for 2034. Would it be a good way to, would it be a good way to stay engaged with the young people? And 2, how would this impact on what we call the ASEAN populist policy? How would that bring ASEAN closer to you as a people and as a youth? With that, I would like to end my presentation, and thank you very much for that.